Morning. I'll share my screen with you. I'm Manuel Ponce. I'll be talking about the campaign analysis. This is the result of our team's effort. Our team consists of advisors in the northwest region of Argentina, with a contribution of Fernando, the advisor of CREA Junga, and Laura from CREA San Patricio, and the generous contribution of CREA sugarcane plantations based on the case series of 400 cases. These are not test results, but management in units and plots of land. This analysis intends to present a number of relevant aspects that will help us identify improvements in the way we grow by respecting the environment resources. I will describe where we grow and where we produce, and then how we go about producing. DAT, traceable agricultural data, is a powerful tool that we use to record the information that results from the 2019 season, as you may see on my presentation. Where is it that we grow? South in the American continent, in the central area of Argentina, in the north region. The area comprises the Oranense Tucumano jungle, where forests and plain lands coexist together between Argentina and Bolivia. The weather is subtropical with a mean temperature of 22 degrees centigrade and different summer seasons, seasons that differ between summer and winter. In summer, temperature may reach 40 degrees centigrade, and in winter, temperature reaches 10 degrees between June and July. It may often happen, as was the case this year, that we may have cold air coming from the south that generates quite a lot of haze. The sugarcane sector in Argentina provides sugar for 44 million inhabitants. This is give or take 2 million tons. Consumption, per capita consumption, is 39.3 kilos of sugar per inhabitant per year, and surplus is used for alcohol and for export purposes. Out of these 2 million tons in the province of Tucumán, 1.3 million tons of sugar is produced. We may take a look at the province, Tucumán. The sugarcane growing area, 275,000 hectares for this year. And I'll try to show that in 2019, the harvest got started late because of rainfall in March and April that didn't allow mechanized harvesters to come into the field and cover 95% of the surface. Beginning in July last year, the climate improved to develop the harvest. There was no mist or haze, but as of October, rainfall started falling again, and that interrupted the normal development. As a matter of fact, some factories had to close their grinding period early on, and others had to do so in December. Tucumán has 275,000 sugarcane hectares, and among those hectares, CREA members reported 21,629 hectares in 405 cases. These are distributed in the province, as is shown on this sketch. Following the circuits, this season had shortfalls of rainfall and surpluses of rainfall with floodings. Even though this won't be part of the analysis, I'm referring to climate phenomena, we do understand that they did have a great impact in combination with management factors. I'll be presenting 5 situations of rainfall anomalies based on the records that date back to 1981 to 2019, generated at the Climate Regional Center for South America. These are the months from December 2018 down to April 2019, where in the records that date back to December, 100 millimeters above the means in those areas I mentioned in January, we had less than 10 millimeters rainfall, down to February with less than 200 millimeters as compared to regular averages. In March, we went back to normal. And on the last one, where there's a light blue color predominating, the accumulated between 800 to 1,200 millimeters is as close as can be to a normal record. But the dispersion of the rainfall phenomenon that happened during that season showed surpluses or excesses with seasonal lack of rainfall. We have 4 different ecoregions according to the agroecological sketch in the province of Tucumán, expressed by Fada Zucardi from the National Tucumán University. The criteria that we followed for environmental classification with a physiographical, climatic, and edaphical grounds. You may see how the Chaco Pampean lands have Korea members in the depressed non-saline lands, and on the green foothills 27%. Up until now, this is the campaign analysis in a descriptive manner. We will now focus on how the productive results behaved, the ones that were identified by each ecoregion. The Chaco Pampean grassland that we see here on this chart behaved above the mean in the region. We can see additionally on this chart the high, the mid, and the low potential in the area. All this happened with a mean rainfall that can be seen to the right, with maximum and minimum rainfall that got recorded. This contributes some sort of an idea of how variable this can be in such a small area. The depressed grassland with saline content had less depression. We are expressing the values of sugarcane per hectare and in sugar hectare content per area in 3 classes: high, mid, and low potential, with a climate variation of give or take 500 millimeters to 1,300 millimeters, depending on the area. The foothill, where we don't have any kind of snowfall, we had this productive behavior marked under the same units with the constant dispersion of rainfall records. Finally, the non-saline depressed grassland that encompasses the entire province in connection to the productive aspects of all 400 CREA members. The open question is how to go about managing those differences between the supply, that is rainfall, and the demand, which is the requirement by what we plant, that is sugarcane. In our system, there are benefits of rotation with soybean before we plant sugarcane. This can be seen not just by simplifying our weed management, but in operational circumstances. We renovate the soil. There is better sprouting and better population of stalks. We can see on this chart that 50.7% of our plants grow after soybean was harvested, and following sugarcane, this is 43.3%.
You can see here the graph, the distribution chart, or with a pie chart, so that you can see this more clearly, and the productive behavior as well of the predecessors will be shown in different columns. You will see at the right, it's tons of cane per hectare, and we see on each column the average result, which has been weighted so that it applies to each case. In the case of soybean, we see productive levels that have been maintained constantly, as well as analysis conducted in previous years. Monocultures, which can be defined as the same species of one plant in one same area for several years, is not outweighed by the advantage of having one cycle every 5 years. And it for sure makes up for that year that is devoted to rotation and lower cost for weed control, as well as a longer useful life for the cane. When we combine yield and the antecessors in age, we see that despite the several years of plantations, the result is more consistency of the results obtained in the different years. As you can observe, in red, at the top part, we have the maximum limits identified, and in the blue, it's the minimum data identified for this analysis that we are presenting. Genetics are definitely an important factor of growing and production. The distribution of the plot lands, the land plot, sorry, of CREA is distributed in the following way: 71% LCP and 9510. It is very encouraging to see the growth of 12.5% of the surface, and in Tucumán, 77 CP, 42 maintains 12.5. So this is a variety which is withdrawing. We see the different varieties in smaller areas. LCP 91281, Tucumana 978, and the productive behavior of this we will see in the next slide. Although the yield here was highly influenced by weather, it is for this reason that we observe the 4 basic varieties in color, in strong colors, with a similar behavior, except TUCP 7742, which is one step below. RA 8928 does not appear very often, but did show its potential. These same varieties with the same genetic material, we observe their behavior in terms of tons of sugar per hectare. The universe of CREA lots has 5.6 tons of sugar per hectare in average, and the LCP 85384 in a year with no freeze, it shows its high level of potential. The behavior of L91 to 81 was very interesting, although it wasn't very communicated. And it's very promising to see the new material of TUC 0312. At CREA, we believe that coverage is the RAC, as it is called in Spanish, the agricultural waste of harvest. It's one of the best ways to be more sustainable, avoiding burning this waste, and it also provides nutrients such as nitrogen for the agro ecosystem. This management with coverage improves the conditions of physical and chemical fertility of the soil. we see that 67% of the surface of CREA members was able to maintain 75 to 100% of coverage. Tucumán has a program which can be certified. It's local gap within global gap, which promotes planting sugarcane without burning and thus develop its production. In this area, in these sugar plantations, we see that there are no agricultural recommendations. The economic factors that govern over the decisions of investments are very assorted, especially in Argentina. We see that in 2018, 13.6% of renovation was below recommended levels. In 2017, the behavior was better. It was 26.2%. And in 2016, way below, only 11% of renovation. We see that 2011, 2012, and 2013 were the years associated to drip irrigation systems where this type of water management promoted these types of systems. Now, let me show you a bit about the productive behavior, where the impact of environmental conditions on sugarcane planted in 2018 was seen very clearly. 59 tons of sugarcane per hectare. And the oldest from 2010, 2012 maintained their levels at about 66 tons associated to a complex irrigation system. So the water deficit can be compensated and manage this type of irrigation. In 2016 and 2017, Ratoon 1 and 2, that's what we call them in the north of Argentina, the socas, showed normal behaviors between 66 and 69 tons without really tapping into its maximum potential. Now we can see that fertilizers with a nitrogen base is more and more widely used, although urea is the most usual. In 45% of our case, calcareous ammonium nitrate is increasing its percentage to 27%. Urea plus bio is also a valid combination in 18% of the cases. And now we are hearing about NPK 21-17-13, and we see the behaviors with each one in this slide. We've analyzed the 4 more utilized sources. We start with average dosage in the light blue column, urea plus bio, CAR plus bio, and the biofertilizer. On the right, you can see the minimum dose, and on the left, the maximum dose. And in the red column, the nitrogen units in average applied per hectare. Here you can clearly see the behavior of each dosage expressed in tons of sugarcane per hectare, where we see quite an even behavior throughout. The amount of nitrogen recommended by research institutions talk about between 130 and 200 per hectare per year, and we are not reaching 75% of that requirement. So we wonder whether the rest is being contributed by the system, by the complex soil and by microorganisms, or whether we are, like I said, not tapping into the maximum potential. When we separate the most utilized use, we see the productive behavior in this CAN, in this nitrate. Per hectare, we have approximately 63 tons, and we see the same behavior with urea, 62, exploring a maximum of 91 and 87 and a minimum of 39 and 33 respectively. For this slide, we eliminated the situation of irrigation and ferti-irrigation. And like I was saying, the trend is maintained in terms of the use of biofertilizers based on selected microorganisms, which enable the nutrient to arrive into the roots. The productive behavior of this combination, CAN plus biofertilizer, produced 62 tons and 61 tons in the other case, without fully knowing what this behavior is associated with. When we reduce the nitrogen units, we believe that this can be maybe because of the lack of acidification of the soil when we use CAN, and the floodings and the leaching, which result in a lack of efficiency. Another requirement is the annual rotation of crops, and we know that this is very productive, but we are also trying to find a balance between plowing and the other coverage. It's encouraging to see that 71% of the cases did not plow for the 2009 season, and as a result, we see that 64 and 62 tons. This trend has been maintained over time after analyzing prior years, where we were able to observe the same behavior. This allowed us to identify weeds with no problems regarding control. In the universe of weeds, we have an annual weed known as tupulo here. It's Cycius polyacanthus. It's a native annual vine that doesn't have such a great effect on productivity, but does have a high multiplication ability through its seed. So the strategies more common are used in a pre-emergency moment, which is fluoxypyr plus atrazine and plus isoxaflutol, and that's the most common combination. And secondly, is the combination of cynodon dactylon in combination with sorghum alipense. Being grass, their control strategies lay in the use of herbicides, which, due to their selectivity, are able to achieve varied results. The most effective thing to do is to rotate with soybean, and there, with the application of total herbicides, we achieve a higher efficiency, like we explained in the first slide. One interesting novelty is organic production hectares. We have approximately 1,500 hectares, which is interesting to consider in the future, to have more hectares dedicated to organic production with the results that we are presenting. This is highly appreciated in the high peaks, but in the mean peaks it was appreciated as well, because this is a lower average. For this analysis, we compared them with the same management in the same agroecological area, so that the results would not be so spread out. Without a doubt, the most important innovation was mechanized planting in CREA members. Approximately 33% of the plantation is currently occupied by the mechanized planting system. We see that in the productive behaviors, in the total cases, 63 tons versus 61 tons, and we have data since 2013. One interesting novelty is that a drip irrigation system was installed, combining two technologies. In this slide, we try to show how the plantation surfaces are managed. In blue, we have manual, and in comparison with the red, where we show the mechanized planting, and how this has grown over the years to really establish itself over the past 2 years as something that is used approximately 40% of the planted surface. As an important piece of information here, we see that manual plantation with 28.5 buds per linear meter, taking 56 as a basis at a minimum of 30. And when we compare this with a mechanized system, we see a higher value of buds per meter, linear meter, with a maximum of 64 and a minimum of 20. I will not delve into this issue because there is someone who will be more going more into detail in this regard. What is the takeaway message of the 2019 season? We see that climate variability in rainfalls has become a distinctive feature that conditions the efficiency of water management, and this is definitely an outstanding problem that we need to pay more attention to. There are things to do, and we need to recover productivity levels. We need to maintain this pace with the different renovations. We must continue diversifying the varieties, and we must think about coverage and the need to plow annually as an ancestral practice with the available materials. We must also pay attention to micronutrients that must be included from different sources and not lose the concept of extraction that that crop has, not to strike the balance out of the system. Also think about organic crops. It's very good to address this need for a more assorted diet. And finally, how important it is to have data to turn that into knowledge. Thank you very much for inviting me and for allowing me to share this information with the productive community. Thank you very much. Thank you to the entire team. We will now open the floor for questions and answers. Manuel, how are you? Thank you very much for your presentation. And we will now take some questions from the audience that I will share now with you. A first question about the annual plowing of the land. Does this have a correlation with other years?
We have been gathering since 2019 information from this practice. And we noticed that with different systems of rainfall, measurement, and soil condition on the different agroecological areas, results are consistent. There are situations where we don't see any productive differences, and therefore we believe it is encouraging to keep looking for efficiency based on a tool as has been assessed in the market so far. I mean, I'm talking about alternatives to improve efficiency when rotating crops. This would enable us to keep considering as to whether it is necessary to rotate a soil on a yearly basis. Thank you. Another question comes next from English, but was translated into Spanish. The influence of soybean as a predecessor, is it repeated every year? The effect of rotating with soybean plantation is seen in every productive season, in every productive year. This is around 20 to 25%, showing superior productivity levels. The influence of leguminoses leaving nitrogen available on soils is highly harnessed, especially during years first and second. But then the influence is given by how clean the sugarcane plantation looks. There's less weed growing in autumn. Therefore, sugarcane can make the most of resources available to them. Thank you, Manuel, for answering these questions, for this presentation, and for your previous effort in putting together such a presentation. Thank you.